unnecessary real recovery talk. My name is Marco Murillo, and I'm a grateful recovering addict. Before I introduce today's special guest, I just want to thank everybody who has been listening to the podcasts, watching the videos on the YouTube channel. I've been getting a lot of great feedback, a lot of good support. Also, most importantly, I've been getting some messages from people that heard something on an episode that related to them, whether they're being an addict or they're in recovery. And I've gotten a couple of messages from people that have a spouse or a friend that's in active addiction right now. And they've really just, asked for suggestions. So that definitely is very important to me. That is the mission of why I started this podcast, to give back what was freely given to me. And I just want to say thank you. I'm very grateful for that. So I'm really excited about this episode. This is episode 10. This is a very close friend of mine. Her name is Renee. She has 32 years clean.
Yes.
Let me say that again. 32 years clean. Hi, Renee. How are you?
I'm really good. How are you?
Good. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too, Marco.
And it's actually, it was something to where you are the first female guest on this podcast. And the 32 years, I felt that, I've heard you share before. We've known each other for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. And you've helped me out in a couple of situations where I was going through some stuff. And there's a lot of knowledge that you have. So welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Great to have you. So let's start. So tell me, where were you born? Where'd you grow up? What was your childhood like?
So I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. I am one of 5 children. My parents always worked together. My dad ran a business and my mom was his bookkeeper. And so whoever the oldest kid was the one that was in charge of stuff.
Okay.
When you got out of school, the oldest one was the one taking care of us. Mm. My childhood was, I think the nicest word I can come up with would be terrorizing.
Okay.
My father drank a lot.
He was an alcoholic?
And he drank often.
Okay.
And he would fly into fits of rage. And I never received a spanking as a child. He came at us full fist, no matter how big we were. So even at 3 and 4 years old, being hit by this 6-foot man was, it was a lot to deal with. And my mother somehow conveniently would leave the room.
Okay.
So there was no support or anybody trying to stop it from happening.
And this was at 3 years old this started.
Yeah. I remember my mother telling me that, when I was still in diapers, that I would stand there and just shiver and urinate on myself because I was so frightened.
Wow.
It was a very scary place to grow up.
Okay, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. And what you had mentioned that so this was at 3 or 4, and then when we spoke before, you had mentioned something when you were 6 years old.
When I was 6 years old, I went to my cousin's house for the summer.
Okay.
We're the same age. And while I was there, my aunt worked the night shift and her husband worked the day shift. And so we were alone with my uncle every evening. So one night my cousin asked me, would you look at magazines with me with my dad? And if you don't, I'm going to get a beating. So, of course, I said, sure, I will. No problem. I had no idea it was going to be pornography. I had no idea it was going to lead to, being molested. And that went on and on for the 3 months that I was there. And, it felt shameful. And it felt like there was no one that could help me. My aunt was pretty stern person. When I got back home, I wasn't going to tell my dad because he beat us all the time anyway.
Right.
And my mom never stuck up for us. So I felt like I couldn't tell anybody.
So you just kept that to yourself?
I kept it to myself until I was 27 years old.
My God. That is some serious trauma.
Yeah. I learned how to shut down very early
in
life. I could shut down and go away, being right there in the room with you and just be gone. You know, that was my first coping skill, was to just go away.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's kind of start where you had said something along the lines of you started smoking weed. So
the first time that I used any kind of substance, I was about 11 or 12, and we got the older guy down the street to buy us some wine.
Okay.
And he bought us some Boone's Farm wine. And I drank 2 bottles of it. And it felt warm. It felt safe. And it felt like nothing else existed. I got very violently sick that night, but I couldn't wait to do it again.
Just like that?
Just like that. Couldn't wait to drink again.
Wow.
Just so I wouldn't feel afraid. You know, I spent every day of my life feeling afraid.
Mm.
So to have those feelings go away for a few hours was awesome. I wanted to be like that all the time. Yeah.
And this is when you had said that you started drinking, and then you started smoking weed, and then with your parents, you said something like that?
Yeah. So the worst beating I ever got in my life, I was 11 years old, and my sister was in charge, and my parents went away for the weekend, and when they came back, they found out that I had drank, and it was the beating of my lifetime that time. I mean, the state police came. It was really...
By both parents?
Behind somebody telling on my parents.
Oh.
So they came the next day, and when they came, my sister was there with me because I couldn't go to school. My face was too messed up. I couldn't go to school. And I told them I fell off the swings. You know, you got loyalty in the dysfunction. Right. You know, don't talk, don't trust, don't tell.
Right.
Those were the rules to live by. So that was like 11 years old. And then all of a sudden at 13, we came to Florida for a couple weeks vacation. And we went back, and my father sold his business, sold his house, and we moved down here. And I found out that my parents had started smoking pot. So now suddenly it's okay to smoke pot.
Okay.
So, you know, the neighborhood I moved into, I was the hit of the neighborhood because my parents had pot, and they had good pot, you know, and I also had a lot of older friends, you know, but we tried everything. I mean, I remember huffing transmission fluid out of a bag.
How do you do that?
Yeah. How do you do that?
I've never heard that.
So, I mean, we tried everything. There was a guy that lived across from us. He would rob pharmacies. My boyfriend would shoot up the liquid. If he got high, then we'd all use some. If he didn't, then we'd throw it away. I mean, addiction came in fast and hard to me.
Yeah,
we
crazy.
Did some real insane stuff, you know, but I continued to use any chance I got, you know, every day of my young life. Yeah. Yeah.
And so walk me through what did that ultimately transition to? You said smoking crack. How did that work?
So my dad died when I was 16.
Okay.
And 2 months later, that was December, 2 months later in February, I found out I was pregnant.
How old were you?
16.
16.
So 2 weeks later, I was married. I'm pretty positive that my uncles told him he'd marry me. I don't remember him ever asking me to marry him, but we were quickly married.
Okay.
And I moved into his house, and that was a time of a lot of drinking, a lot of drinking transpired during those early years. When I had my son at 17, I married a guy just like my father. I did what I was raised to do. I was raised to grow up, marry a man that's very abusive, and take it and don't help your children, and be quiet and don't tell and don't talk and don't trust. So I did exactly what I was raised to do. So I decided my kid was not going to grow up like that.
Oh, really?
So I decided that I would give my son up for adoption. And my mother took him to Michigan with my younger brother. They moved away, and that was a final decision. You know, I knew that I could never change my mind. You know, even though I wanted to many times, I knew I could never change my mind. You know, so that was 16 and 17. And then, you know, 18 through 27 was large amounts of cocaine. Freebasing came into play. Crack came into play. So most of the time I was smoking pot, smoking crack, and drinking.
All three combined?
All the time.
All the time?
Like every day.
Every day?
Every single day. And sometimes I would think, how did I get here? You know, how did I get here? I don't understand.
So you're basically looking at yourself, asking yourself, how did you get there? But you didn't realize you had a problem. It just continued. It just continued
until I was 27. When I was 27, my then ex-husband, my second husband, he had, by now I had already had another child.
Okay.
So in 82, I got married, and in 83, I found out I was pregnant. And the message I got for me was that God forgave me for giving up my child, and he was going to give me a second chance at being a great mom.
That's the message you got?
That's the message I got.
Okay.
I was pregnant, and I thought, oh my God, he's going to let me do it again and do it successfully this time.
Okay.
So that was 1984. He was born. First day home from the hospital, I started using again. And I spent the next 3 years trying to figure out how to stop.
And you never heard of meetings or any type of fellowship or anything like that at all? Like you?
No, my first introduction to a 12-step meeting was my son's father had overdosed, and he called me and asked me if I wanted to go to a dance, if I would bring my son with me and go to a dance with him. And him and I had this very codependent relationship, you know, couldn't live with you, can't live without you, you know, type of on and off. But I agreed to go. So we went to a 12-step club, and I didn't know it at the time, but we walked in and we sat in a meeting.
Okay.
So, you know, I was still smoking pot. I had just smoked pot before I had met up with him. I didn't know anything about recovery, and I didn't know anything about 12 steps or anything like that. So I had just did what I always did. And then I agreed, and we went down there, and I realized I was in a 12-step meeting, and I was high.
Right.
And I kept looking around like, these people know you're high.
Right.
You know, so it was really bad. So, but we stayed and we danced and we had a good time. And so the next time that he called and asked us to go, I decided I wouldn't smoke pot before I went. I would wait until after I got home.
Okay.
So that was the beginning of me finding out about recovery.
Right.
I don't remember what was said in the meetings. I don't remember a lot. But what happened was it started to stick. like through osmosis, through being there and hearing stuff and listening
Really?
for that hour.
Yeah.
First I thought everybody was lying.
Yeah, it's impossible to be clean.
There's no way that they could like not be smoking crack right now. I mean, it's just not possible. I've tried many times. It never worked. So how could they do it? But I began recovery. I went to a meeting on my own, and I remember sitting on my hands. I was really, really uncomfortable. And there was a gentleman, they called him Papa Gary.
Okay.
He ran the meeting clubhouse, and he said, "I want you to keep coming back." And of course, I'm like, "You're a suspect, dude. What do you want from me?" Okay. So every time someone said, "Hey, keep coming back," I thought, they want something.
Right.
They're after something. Nobody's just nice to you for no reason.
Exactly.
Not where I come from anyway. So I began to learn how to not use an hour at a time.
Just through meetings.
So
I remember you had said that you went to, was it 4 rehabs and
so no, I went to one rehab.
Okay.
That was in 89. So what I did was I was living with my ex-husband. We were engaged again because we were really stupid like that, like it was going to work the second time when it didn't work the first time. So we were re-engaged, and I told him, I really want to stop doing this. I really want to stop doing this. And he's like, this is just how it is. This is just how it is.
That's what he said to you?
Yeah. This is
part of life.
This is what we do. This is what we do. So I talked to my best friend, Robin, and I asked her if she would help take care of my son. And I got in the phone book and I found an all-women's rehabilitation center, and I called them, and I had to not use for a couple of days and I could come in.
Okay.
So then I started with just for the next half hour.
Okay.
Just for the next 15 minutes, So I went from Saturday to Monday morning.
Detoxing yourself.
Didn't smoke crack, didn't drink, didn't smoke pot. And they said, come on in. So I went and checked myself in, and it was pretty scary for me. I was not used to being around women. You couldn't trust women. I know what women did. I was a woman. I stayed there 26 days. I broke the rules. They threw me out. I went right back to my son's father, and I stayed clean 4 days.
You stayed clean 4 days?
4 days.
Okay.
Yep. So almost a year later, I decided I needed to get clean. My kid really needed a parent.
All right.
And, God gave me this opportunity, and I was really messing it up. And so I left one morning. I told him I was leaving. I was not coming back. And he said I couldn't have my kid. I said, that's fine. I have to do this. I just have to do this.
So you just woke up and was like, I can't do this. I can't fucking do this anymore. I got
to go.
So what did you do?
So I got on the bus. I still had a job. Through my whole addiction, I had a job.
That's crazy. How do you do that?
I was secretary by day and crackhead by night. I mean, it was crazy. It was a crazy, crazy life.
Multitasking with jobs.
Yeah. So
so you left. So you left, and you told him that you're leaving.
I'm leaving. I went to my sister's house, my sister Sheila, and I stayed with her for a couple of days till payday. And I got a little motel efficiency, and I lived there, and I took the bus to work because I didn't have a car. So I took the bus to work, and I got a phone call maybe about a week later. We don't have any groceries. You got to help us. So I asked somebody to go with me, and I dropped off a bag of groceries to my son and his father. And then about a week later after that, he said, you got to come and get this kid. I said, that's what I've been waiting for.
Okay.
So now I have my kid. But now I also have daycare costs. I'm riding the bus. We're eating chicken noodle soup because it's 2 for $1.
Right.
And struggled tremendously. But the goal of each day was to not get high. The goal for each day.
That's amazing.
And after 30 days, I let his father come in the house, and he had drugs on him, and I ended up using. The next day I went back, I got another white key tag.
Right.
Started all over again. 90 days, he came around again. Drugs in his hand. If I saw it, I used it.
So no, you had no neutrality over it. It just, yeah.
No, it had total control over my life. If I saw it, I was going to smoke it. And then the last time that I used, I had 10 months clean, and that was on the weekend of, it was May 16th, 1990, and it was my birthday.
Okay. That's the last time you used.
That's the last time I used. I used for 4 days.
4 days straight.
4 days nonstop.
Okay.
And then
this is the end now. You're telling me.
This is the end of my using.
And what happened?
So my son's father said, "Let's stop now." And I said, "Stop now? We can't stop now. Like, we can never stop. You don't just stop.
Right.
That's not what we do. We got to keep going. We got to keep going." He's like, "No, we're going to stop. We're going to stop." And about 10 minutes later, like, the feelings came.
What feelings?
I messed up again. I had 10 months clean and I screwed up again. Like, this is
like shame.
Very shameful, very humiliating. I knew I had to go back and get a white key tag, and I had to start again. There was just nothing else I could do. So the first thing that I did was we went to the noon meeting.
Okay.
I cried during the whole meeting.
Did you share?
I did not share.
You just went to the meeting.
I just went to the meeting.
And yeah.
And this guy, Jerry, who I'll never forget as long as I live, Jerry was doing the key tags, and I got up and I got another white key tag.
And that was your last one?
That was my last one. So my conversation with my 12-step sponsor at that point was, tell me exactly what to do.
Right.
Exactly. I need very specific information in order to remain clean.
What was that information?
That information was, put your cigarettes under the bed.
Okay.
When you get up in the morning, you get on your knees to reach down there to get them cigarettes, and you just tilt your head a little bit and say, "God, please help me stay clean."
Okay.
She said, you don't have to believe it's there. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to be able to draw a picture of it or describe it. I just want you to do that. And when you get home and you get ready to go to bed, I want you to put your cigarettes way up under the bed again, and I want you to turn your head up, and I want you to say thank you. So that was the first thing I had to do.
Okay.
I had to call my sponsor every day.
For how many days?
Every day.
Every day, just every day.
Just every day.
Okay.
Like, I'll bet you we talked every day for more than 6 months. I had to go to a meeting every day. And I knew some people in the room, so sometimes I had a ride, but sometimes I had to take the bus.
Right.
And then figure out a way how I was going to get home. And I had this small child. My child was 6 years old, so I just drug him everywhere I went.
So did you do like the 90 and 90, or you did more than that?
I did it for a couple years.
For a couple years, you went to a meeting a couple years every day.
Every day.
Every day. Every
single day. And
so he pretty much grew up in the rooms.
He did grow up in the rooms. They had a dance at one of the 12-step programs. They had a dance on Friday night, and then another 12-step fellowship had dances on Saturday night, and they were only about 4 blocks away from each other. So we went to dances on the weekends. That's what we did for fun.
Okay. What else did she make you do besides?
So I had to pray I had to call her every day. I had to go to a meeting every day. I had to begin my step work.
Okay.
I had to start talking to other women in recovery.
And that was difficult, right?
That was very difficult for me. I didn't trust women. I didn't trust them. And I picked some people who had time in the program, somebody that had at least a year in the program. So I started calling women, talking to them for a few minutes. On May 20th, the day that I got clean, I told my son's father, we always say goodbye, but I never mean it. I mean it this time. Like, I want you to go away and never come back. Never. If you want to see your son, call and I'll send him somewhere and you can see him, but you will never step foot on my property again. Because I knew people, places, things. And people was the hard one for me. But I had to justify it, but that's my son's father. Of course, he has rights to see him.
Just really quick, explain people, places, things. What does that relate to in terms of your recovery? What does that mean if somebody doesn't understand that?
What I was taught was that there's something called people, places, and things. And people are the ones who are still, going out on Saturday night drinking, or they have a beer every day after work. People who are smoking pot, smoking crack. Anybody that used in any kind of way was not allowed in my life. And I let my family members go, like my sisters and brothers, like they couldn't be around me anymore. So I let my whole family go. And I learned to make friends in the rooms. And places was a little hard for me because I had to walk right past the guy I copped from because I was living here.
Right.
And I used here. I moved here at 13 and had been here ever since. And so I had to learn how to say the Serenity Prayer and walk on the other side of the street and walk a little bit faster and keep saying that Serenity Prayer out loud. And once you tell them, no, you're not interested a couple times, they tend to leave you alone.
Okay.
Because I had to walk my kid to daycare and then walk back to go to work. And then at the end of the business day, I had to walk down and get him and bring him back and then get on the bus and go home. Things were different in my world. So I couldn't do certain things. I couldn't drive around a neighborhood that I'd copped in before. I couldn't call up people that I knew were using.
Right.
Very, very close friends I had to lose ties with. So everything had to change at this point. And my last time using, I remember that the real difference for me was that I got honest.
With what?
Like really honest.
You got honest with yourself?
I got honest with myself. I got honest with the people at meetings. So I had to tell them, like, I have this little motel row apartment and, I don't know how to live.
Right.
I don't know how to pay bills. I know how to cash my check on Friday and go cop. That's what I know how to do. I got a 6-year-old child. I don't know how to be a mother. I haven't been being his mother yet. I've been being a drug addict. So I don't know how to be a mother.
And how did these people relate to that, to you? And what was that like? What did they do? What was that like for you?
Well, they did a couple different things. So one was my sponsor taught me that on payday, I was to go to the check cashing place because banks would not allow me to have money in their bank. I had been very bad with banks.
Okay.
And she told me if your rent is $400 a month, then you're going to get a money order for $100. You're going to make it out to the landlord so that you can't cash it later. And you're going to collect those every week. And then at the end of the month, you have the money to pay the bills. So that's how I learned. That's how I learned about money. The people in the rooms, they could relate very well to me because some of them had been through it already and some were going through it currently. And some had learned years ago. So there was a lot of really good support and a lot of good kudos for being so honest.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because of the honesty.
Yes. I didn't know how to pay the electric bill. I didn't know how to pay the phone bill. I didn't know how to make friends. I didn't know how to make friends. Before it was I use, okay, great, we're friends.
Right.
So this was like, I had to say, hi, how are you? And it started with, hello, and I'd walk away because I was so uncomfortable. And then it was, hello, how are you? And then I'd walk away, and then it was turned into, hello, how are you? How was your day?
Right.
So it was a very slow process learning how to become a friend.
Let's backtrack really quick. Is there anything else your sponsor, I just want to make sure that I got everything. Is there anything else your sponsor told you to do besides what you had mentioned so far?
Yes. So the other things that were involved in it was I had to be of service.
What does that mean?
And I thought, I don't know how to be of service. I don't even know what that means.
Right.
So she said, you're going to go to H&I, which is hospitals and institutions, and you can't bring a meeting in yet, but you could go there to their meeting and you could sit there and listen. So within maybe a month or so, they needed somebody to take the pamphlets and count them in tens,
right,
and put a rubber band on them. And that was my first service position.
And how long did that last for?
That lasted for probably close to a year. My service resume.
It's great. Your service resume is impeccable.
It's
crazy.
It's amazing. I mean, it's so amazing. I've been convention chairs and area chairs and H&I chairs and president of the Miracles Club at one point. I've been the regional service committee member. God, I've done so many things, and I've volunteered I got a home group. That was the other thing that I had to do was I had to get a home group, which is a group I had to go to every week faithfully, no matter what. And I had to learn how to share in the meeting so that people could get to know me and I could get to know them. And that was actually really good. It was a really good thing because it reminded me of that TV show Cheers.
Okay.
When you walk in, everyone knows your name.
Right.
Hey, Renee, how are you? It was like, hey, how you doing?
They hug you.
It felt good. They hug you. And it felt really nice to be there. It felt really nice to be there. Trying to recover from drug addiction and deal with the traumas of my lifetime was very difficult.
Simultaneously trying to do both was very difficult for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it really was very hard because people who were loud still scared me.
Okay.
So if you started talking really loud, I'd turn to 6 years old. I mean, I just froze and I was scared to death. I was always promiscuous during my whole lifetime as a result of being molested. People are either over-sexual or they are non-sexual. So I slept with so many people that it was just ridiculous. And so I did some work. I did some therapy. I did some what they call EMDR therapy, which is eye movement desensitization. So I did some of that. I did an IOP group in the very, very beginning.
an intensive outpatient program, right?
Yes. So you go once a week and you talk and you tell them how you're doing and what's going on in your life and what you need help with. So I did that. So I've done, once I started the steps were amazing. They were so amazing. I remember after I did my fourth step. Mm-hmm. Now, when I came into recovery, my skirts were as short as my underwear line.
Okay.
I was a size 10. I had black hair down the middle of my back. In hindsight, I was a very beautiful young lady. In hindsight, I never knew it at the time. I never thought I was attractive. Very low self-esteem, low self-worth.
Yeah. How could you? What were you? The trauma that you were.
So besides being molested at 6 and my father beating me as a kid, and then all of a sudden I could smoke pot and do whatever and started doing drugs and drinking and everything else. I had been raped 2 different times, and I didn't tell anybody about that either, because I thought you shouldn't have been there. This young Hispanic guy said he would give me a ride. So I got in his van. And before it was over with, I was raped. So to me, it was my own fault. I didn't hold people responsible for what they did. I always assumed that it was my fault. It must be. I came into the program feeling like I was not worthy of love, that no one would love me, that I would never amount to anything. But what I really wanted more than anything else in the world was I wanted to be a good mom. I wanted to be a good mom to my kid. And during that time when my boss helped us get an apartment instead of the motel room, and so we got this apartment, and we had nothing but carpet on the floor. There was no pieces of furniture. There was 2 plates, 2 knives, 2 forks, a saucepan. We each had a couple things of clothing, and that's how I learned to live from that point, sleeping on the floor with my kid with a blanket on us, and just saying, if I stay clean, it's going to get better. I know that if I stay clean, it's going to get better. Becky told me so. I believe her. She's my sponsor, and I'm just going to do everything that she tells me to do. And for 6 years, she was my sponsor. And I kept doing all those things year after year after year. And 32 years later, I sponsor many women. I'm still involved in service work. I'm involved with a convention this year, doing the program for the whole convention. Yep. I still go to meetings, all week during the week. I still pray every morning, and my prayers are much different. The God of my understanding is much different. I know that it's truly God's grace and mercy that I'm the one who gets to sit here with Clean Time, and there's another young lady right now, walking down Military Trail selling sex so she can get high.
Right.
I'm not better than her. So it's truly God's grace that I'm here.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a full surrender. It sounds like what you did. You fully surrendered, and you definitely took all the advice of your sponsor, but there's different things you also got outside therapy.
Yes.
So, and everybody's journey and their path is different in recovery. Mm-hmm. And what I find it very interesting about your story is that you, after the fourth relapse, you just woke up and you said, okay, I had enough. I'm looking at my addiction straight on.
Openly and honestly.
Openly and honestly.
It wasn't, no one else was to blame.
Right.
You know, I had blamed
you took it all upon yourself, and you looked at yourself.
It was all me. And, you know, at the time there was a song on the radio, Michael Jackson, The Man in the Mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And when I listened to that song, it played so often, and it starts with the man in the mirror. And I knew that was the truth. I knew that was the truth. And the other song that I held on to very dearly was Wilson Phillips' Hold On.
Okay.
Hold on for one more day. Things will go your way. And I just held on to those songs, and I played them as often as I could. And everywhere I walked, I said the Serenity Prayer while I was walking. And I used to borrow $20 from this guy. And because I didn't have enough money to make ends meet.
Mm.
So I would borrow $20 from him, and I would pay him back on Friday. And then I'd say, now can I borrow $20 again? So I did that for like 6 months.
Yeah.
And then I had gotten a raise at work. So I was like, okay, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. You know,
okay.
The ends started to meet.
Right.
You know, I was able to move on to a 2-bedroom apartment. And from there, I ended up buying a home and stayed there. And then another trauma that I had, I was dating this woman, and she ended up going back out smoking crack. So I ended the relationship, and she sat outside my house all night with a can of gasoline and waited till the morning, sent her kid in my house. And I thought something was weird, but I just did what I needed to do. And she ended up getting into a physical altercation with me. She got her son to go out and get the gasoline. She brought gasoline and dumped it on me and my kid. She was going to start us on fire.
Wait. She poured gasoline on you and your son.
And my son.
And her son was there as well.
And her son was there as well. He went outside to get the gas because she told him to. Then she wanted matches. Get me the matches. So he came in, and he was so nervous, and he was so scared. And he ended up just flinging them at her.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, I don't know if it was God intervening. I have no idea, but she stood up and said, everybody get in the car.
Okay.
And I was like, oh my God, thank God. Okay. I was almost started on fire with my kid.
You're covered in gasoline. She's driving the car.
She's driving the car.
And what happened?
So she was taking us up to Lake Wales because her mother lives there. Mm. And a sheriff pulled us over. And when I looked in the rearview mirror, the policeman came to my side of the car, and he said, are you okay? And I said, can we just go now? And he said, no, I want to know if you're okay. And I looked in the rearview mirror, and I could see she was in handcuffs. Mm-hmm. So I said, no, I'm not okay. Let me tell you what just happened. They sent the sheriff to my house, which was a double wide trailer, and confirmed that there was gasoline smell coming from my house, and she was arrested. She went to jail. She did 3 to 5 years in jail for that. But the message was clear. Don't you dare trust anybody.
Right.
Because you never know anybody.
Yeah.
So I had a really hard time dealing with violence in recovery. You know, I didn't want to trust my sponsor anymore. I didn't want to trust my friends anymore. I went back to therapy again because I needed help.
I've never heard a story like that, but I remember you told me it before, and I was writing it down, and I asked you like 3 times. Can you just repeat that again for me, please?
Yeah.
Look, if you, one last thing you want to talk about, one last thing you want to say, if somebody's listening to this, and in a couple sentences.
In a couple sentences, I would say,
if they're struggling,
it doesn't matter if you believe us or not. It doesn't matter if you think you can do it or not. Just try. Come to a 12-step meeting. Say hello to someone. People are going to say hello to you. They're going to want to hug you. It's okay. You don't have to tell them your dark secrets. You can just come in and sit down and listen. And you too can have recovery no matter what you've done, where you've been, how bad it is. None of that matters. What matters is that we found a way to stop using, and you can too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have an amazing story. Thank you, Renee, very much. I really appreciate you coming in. I'll see you soon. I'll see you at the convention, right?
Yes, you will. Okay. Absolutely.
Thanks again. Thank you for everybody that is tuning into the podcast, and appreciate the support. Thanks everybody who is watching the videos on the YouTube channel and subscribing. Appreciate it. And we'll be back soon. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Thank you so much.